All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us, of course, by the official beer of the program. You know we're talking Johnny Cuba. How else are we going to enjoy, maybe not enjoy, but how else are we going to watch Thursday Night Football tonight than with an ice-cold Johnny Cuba in our hand? Go to johnnycuba.us. Use the Johnny Locator. You'll find the nearest location to you. Make sure you always drink responsibly, and don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Our pal is Chris Canty, our resident Super Bowl champion, making his debut, his inaugural appearance on ZASLOW Show 2.0. You hear him every morning on Sportsmanlike, 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio. Hello, Canty. How are you?
I'm good. And first of all, let me say it's overdue that I'm now on the podcast. I don't know where the invitation got lost. I'm glad I'm finally here. Let's call it a year too late.
Well, you know what? It didn't get lost, and I don't like to see. I don't want to bother people, all right? I want to have you on the show when there's something specific to talk about. And look, we'll start right here. I'll start with a mea culpa. Canty, you know, Amber Wilson and I, we're taking shots at you for a year now, all right, for your thoughts and your comments, especially after Tua Tagovailoa signed the big deal with the Dolphins. You know, we were having our way, all right? We're taking shots at you, and I got no problem. See, us in the sports media business, we don't like admitting when we're wrong. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. Canty, I was wrong. You were right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, unfortunately, it hasn't been what Dolphins fans have hoped with Tua. And now the question becomes what happens next? Because it feels like the Dolphins fans are in for a long, long season. And ultimately, it's about being able to set the program up for success. And I have a hard time believing that the team, as constituted, remains intact by seasons. And it just doesn't feel like it's going to make sense because the Dolphins seem like they're poised to fall out of it. And if so, it's time to start selling off pieces.
So I wanted to respond to something. I played a couple of clips from you this morning talking about Tua, talking about the Dolphins heading into tonight's game. And I wanted to respond to something that you were responding from what I said last night, where I said, this is not the same quarterback from a couple years ago. And you said, yes, it is. It's exactly the same quarterback. What I want to clarify there is it's the same quarterback in the sense that he doesn't make the plays with the game on the line. That's always been a problem. He doesn't make the special plays, the improvisational plays that you need to when things break down around you. That's what makes you a special quarterback. The place where I'm saying he's not the same quarterback as he was a couple years ago, he may have been fine in the game against New England, but take the Indianapolis game in week number 1. That was a broken quarterback. That was a bad player. Like, Tua hasn't been a bad player, but what I'm seeing right now, especially from the first week of the season, that is not a good quarterback, and that is not the same guy that we saw a couple years ago.
Well, yeah, I think the reason why it's not the same guy is because when he had that big season a couple of years ago, it was year 2 of Mike McDaniel's scheme. It was relatively novel as far as NFL standards are concerned. You saw a lot of expand motion, condensed formations, things that people weren't paying attention to. So the combination of the X's and O's and the sheer speed that the Dolphins were personneled with made it a tough offense to defend. But fast forward a couple of years later, everybody is now adjusted, personnel their organizations a little bit differently, your defense is a little bit differently, and seeing more film in terms of what the Miami Dolphins with Mike McDaniel and Tua want to do. And now all of a sudden, defenses are taking away the first read for Tua in the passing progression. And that's the word on the street now. You take away his first read, and there's going to be a lot of panic. And ultimately, that panic is going to lead to turnovers, and they come in bunches. Since he came into the league, you're talking about Tua being second in games where he has 3 turnovers or more, only to Trevor Lawrence. He's got 7 of them things. And it's starting to happen with more frequency. And I believe the reason why is because defenses have adjusted, and we haven't seen a counterpunch from Tua or Mike McDaniel. And unfortunately, with the roster now being somewhat depleted because of some bloated salaries, the Miami Dolphins haven't been able to surround Tua with upper echelon talent all over the field. So I think there's a combination of things that have led to the Miami Dolphins offense not being what we're accustomed to seeing from Tua and Mike McDaniel.
I thought you guys made a great point this morning as well when talking about how, I think it was Evan that made the point, talking about how there doesn't appear to be a singular leader, like a guy who is in charge. And I think Michelle, chimed in with, if you're paying a guy $200 million and he's not the guy who seems to be like in charge of everything, that's a major problem.
Well, yeah, and here's the issue. We thought Tua was going to take on more of that leadership role this offseason, calling out Tyreek Hill publicly.
You didn't like that?
I didn't. I wasn't a fan of it because Tyreek Hill is the best player, and I'm not the best player on the team. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that you can't call out the best player on the team, but you would prefer that those things happen behind the scene. And with it happening in the offseason and early in training camp, I didn't think the timing of it made sense. You got to give it an opportunity to fully set in terms of trying to hold the best player of the team accountable to the standard that you all are trying to establish. And doing it at the beginning of the training camp doesn't make sense because you're just starting to put your football team together. If you waited until the beginning of the season or midway through the season to call them out publicly, that's something separate and apart. That's after you've given yourself plenty of time to do it behind the scenes. But it just doesn't feel like Tua did a good enough job of leading in that moment or with his methodology. And so that's the part that I'm critical about. And I wanted to see how this season was going to start with him calling out Tyreek Hill in such a public fashion so early in the process of putting your team together. And unfortunately, we're getting an answer that a lot of Dolphins fans aren't really happy with. And so that's why I think there are some serious questions about Tua, not just as a player on the field, but as the CEO and the leader of your organization. And that's what the quarterback position is. It's a leadership position by nature. It's a CEO spotted C-suite. The quarterback is closer to ownership than the quarterback is to the other 52 guys on the roster. That is just the reality of the NFL business. And unfortunately, when it comes to both aspects of the job, in terms of being a CEO and being a really good quarterback, it doesn't feel like Tua is doing what the Dolphins expected him to do after they gave him the contract.
Chris, what have you made of the discourse around Mike McDaniel lately?
I think it's fair. He came into this season a lot of questions about whether or not this Dolphins team was going to be able to win when it matters the most, which is in the playoffs. We've seen them put together solid regular seasons. We've seen them put together double-digit win seasons. It was about being able to take that next step. And with so many other teams in the division in a state of flux, we thought that the Miami Dolphins could potentially rise up, especially in the post-Tom Brady era of the AFC East. That has not been the case. The Bills have had a stranglehold on the division, and the Miami Dolphins haven't come close to threatening them. And that is probably the most unfortunate part, because they're the ones that have the established quarterback more so than anybody else other than the Bills in that division. And for them not to be relatively close to the Buffalo Bills in terms of competition, it's very telling in terms of the overall trajectory of Mike McDaniel's program. So unfortunately, I think it ends up being a situation where if the Dolphins don't have a winning season, if they don't contend for a playoff spot, you could see the organization deciding to pivot away from Mike McDaniel.
Chris, I have no problem raising my hand and pointing out the hypocrisy coming from me, where the things about Mike McDaniel that I thought were charming or endearing the first couple years that he was here, I really liked those things, and now they annoy me. Like these things bother me. Do guys in the locker room, like, the way he dresses, the sneakers, the pants are pulled up to the knees, he's got the gold watch, kind of what I think now are the dopey things he says in the press conferences. Do guys in the locker room notice or care about that kind of stuff?
No, not even a little bit. Guys in the locker room just want their head coach to give them the answers to the test. That's all you want as a professional athlete. When we go out there on the field, we want it to be an open book test. We want our coach to tell us exactly what we need to do. Give us answers if we see something that's a little bit different or something that's unexpected, but make sure that you prepare us so that when we get to the game, it's easier than what we have in practice. And it just doesn't feel like there's anything easy for the Miami Dolphins when they get out there on the football field. I don't know what the identity of this team is. I know what it's supposed to be based on how they spent their money, but it's a far cry in terms of the product on the field, what we're getting. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of Mike McDaniel's swag or his shtick, so to speak, but I can tell you that if you're not winning games and if he's not providing answers for the guys in terms of how to win games, then it's going to wear thin.
How is it possible, Chris, for the Dolphins offense to look the way it did the first 2 years and now for most of last year kind of struggled, and now it's really struggled at the start of this year. I mean, is it as simple as the rest of the league caught up to Mike McDaniel and he hasn't been able to make an adjustment to it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, free agency is real. Attrition is real. I mean, not having Robert Hunt, not having Teron Armstead, you're going to feel that impact on your offensive line. And then you have the issue of the schematics of it, right? People see what you're doing now. They see your quarterback's strengths, they see your quarterback's weaknesses, and they zero in on those things. And then, of course, when you pay said quarterback $53 million a year, it's going to impact the quality that you have at other position groups across the rest of the roster. And I think you're seeing the perfect confluence of events. People are catching up to, where the Dolphins are from an X's and O's standpoint, what they like to do, the identity around Tua and how he thrives as a quarterback, and they're trying to come up with answers for that. But I think also simultaneously, there has been a little bit of deterioration, a little bit of slippage with the Miami Dolphins roster because it's a hard cap sport and you can't pay everybody. And you're paying the quarterback a ton of money. And see, that's where I think the spotlight has to shift back to Tua, because when you pay a quarterback at that level, he has to raise the floor of everybody around him. You're going to bring in people in the organization that might not necessarily be as good as the people that were their predecessors at those respective positions, but you're anticipating that the quarterback is going to be a force multiplier and make those individuals better than what they have been at other stops across the NFL. And that just has not been the case with Tua. And it's unfortunate, but we're seeing that in real time with the Miami Dolphins.
If they get blown out tonight on Thursday Night Football, which I think they will, what does tomorrow look like?
I think tomorrow it's going to feel like the sky is falling. Ultimately, I don't think anybody loses their job tomorrow. But I do think we're going to continue to call into question whether or not Tua should be the guy. And if he's not the guy, then what's next for the Miami Dolphins as an organization, and potentially starting to field those phone calls for other players that are quality on the rest of the roster. So guys like Jalen Phillips and Tyreek Hill and Zach Sealer and all these other guys that are quality players that championship contenders could absolutely use, the Miami Dolphins, when they get that phone call in that front office, they're actually going to listen and entertain the possibility of moving off of some of those guys, because it feels like this season ends up being a sunk cost.
I think you're right about the fallout from a potential blowout tonight. And with that said, without you, I don't want you to sit here and call for people to lose their jobs, but how does the general manager keep his job then?
That's a hell of a question. And I don't necessarily see a path for Chris Grier to keep his job throughout the course of this season. But I think that they will keep him in place and allow him to navigate this season to position the franchise for building moving forward. This is somewhat of the long goodbye for the Miami Dolphins in 2025. We're saying goodbye to the GM, probably saying goodbye to the head coach, and a strong possibility you could be saying goodbye to the quarterback too.
Prediction tonight, do you disagree with me saying that I think it's going to be a blowout?
No, my prediction tonight is pain.
Yeah,
it's gonna be pain.
Oh, it's gonna be so ugly.
Like Mr. T in Rocky III. My prediction: pain. Like that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be painful. I mean, you might want to take a shot of the drink that you were promoting coming into the podcast and take a few of them because it's gonna be that kind of night. It's gonna be that kind of night.
I'm very jealous of you guys this week, Chris. You've had the wrestlers in studio every day. Who have you enjoyed talking to the most?
Oh, man, Seth Rollins was awesome, man. He was absolutely awesome, just having him roll through there. Of course, all of our guests were good. Braun Breaker, former Baltimore Raven, Kennesaw State football player. He's awesome having him in there. Cody Rhodes called him the future of WWE, so that was exciting to hear. And then, of course, having Cody in today, it's going to be great. Tomorrow, we're going to have Triple H. So it's been stacked in terms of WWE superstars rolling through Unsportsmanlike. It's been a whole lot of fun, man. I was hoping that somebody would pile drive Evan Cohen into the floor when they came in to do the interview, and then pile drive him into the floor because we don't need him for the rest of the show. I was hoping that somebody would do that and we could put it out on social media. No such luck so far, but we still got Triple H coming in tomorrow. So maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit of hope. A little bit of hope.
By the way, he needs to work on his impression of me. That's a rough impression. All right. He needs to workshop that a little bit. All right. And then you do it in the mirror a few times before the next time you're breaking out in front of a microphone. Rough impression of me that he tried out this morning.
Yeah, Evan Cohen, Jonathan Zaslow, he is not.
Chris, excellent job. I really appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.